He is going to talk to us all about his current work with finances, financial freedom. He recently wrote a book, The Capacity Model, which we'll talk about. And I'm really happy to have him on and share with the audience. So, Steve, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the work you do putting this together and sharing the platform.
Yeah. Briefly chronicle, your experience and how you got to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been an entrepreneur, but I took a long detour into employee land. But I started my first company when I was 15 years old that I ran all through high school and college and paid my way through that. And then graduated college early and got into the financial services industry. So was an advisor, when I was 20 years old for about 4.5 years, and then got into the employee side because I wanted to move out. I was living in Alaska. I wanted to get out of Alaska. And so I knew if I did well in a leadership capacity there, I'd get moved. And I did. So overall, spent 17 years at New York Life Insurance Company. Was a partner, senior partner, and ultimately a managing partner running a firm of about 120 people. Very highly compensated employee though. And like I said, I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. And so about 2 years ago, really felt the call and the tug to go back to entrepreneurship. And I left that career to start the Well Recruiting Solutions about a year and a half ago. And so now I own and run a company of about 30 people, and we help wealth management firms hire the talent they need to hit their growth goals.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll talk about just your journey. So one thing is talking about is, currently what do clients come to you for help with? Is it, asset management? Is it investment advice? Is it consulting? What do they come to you for?
Yeah, so our clients are the asset managers or the retirement or financial planners that are more than a solopreneur. So they've got a firm, they've got a team, and they're looking to scale and grow that team. And so we help them with the human capital side and find them the talent that they need, whether they need more advisors or they need support staff or leadership. And we're really deeply entrenched in that. And so we find them the elite talent that they need.
Hmm, interesting. America and the world at large is going through some really challenging times. I think COVID was just kind of opening the lid, but it's resetting itself. And so, what is one piece of advice you wish everyone would take to heart regarding their finances?
Yeah, I would say just the overall, and I'm sure you preach this from the rooftops, but like overall, just like living on less than you make and having margin. I left a $900,000 a year career to start a company where, I haven't got a paycheck from it for 20 months. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I did what the vast majority of Americans do and live, upgrade their lifestyle every single time they get a pay raise. And so that has truly given me the freedom and the ability to build a company the right way and invest and scale and not have to extract income from it from day one.
Yeah. A lot of the financial services industry and kind of government and corporations, how is what you're doing helping? Because there's a negative connotation with Wall Street, and we're hearing about government fraud and corruption and just, lack of faith. How is what you're doing changing that?
Yeah, so from a few different perspectives. So the name of my company is The Well Recruiting Solutions. And so oftentimes people will be like, what does that mean? Why the well? And it actually has a three-prong meaning. So the first meaning, I came from and grew up in a very, very middle-class family. My mom stayed at home and raised my younger sister and I. My dad worked, mid-level management job. Yeah, they had credit card debt, well into their 50s. And so, I mentioned I started a company when I was 15 years old. That's because I needed to make money to be able to play on the basketball team and, have shoes for basketball and school supplies and things like that. And so me moving my career and going into financial services really, it was a lot of hard work, like digging a well, especially in the old days when you had to do it by hand. Ton of work, and it takes a long time. It's a big investment. You get nothing for many, 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 many days of working or years in that sense. But once you get there, once you get to the bottom where the water table is, you're going to have a life sustaining and really thriving source for generations to come. Same thing for me in the financial services industry. That allowed me to set up from a financial aspect and frankly, a personal and professional growth aspect, my grandkids that I've never even met yet. My kids are 8 and 10, but I know my grandkids will be good to go because of that. So for me personally, that was a big deal. And so our company helps people do that. And then we help firms, other entrepreneurs who had a dream of building a business that was going to provide for them and their employees. And then in our industry, it's also the clients that, they help provide a financial peace of mind to. We've dug the well to produce and be able to identify talent to help those business owners reach their business goals by having the right people in their firm. And then the last thing I would say is, I talked earlier about margin and having margin. And most people think, that's saving a lot of money, not spending a lot, pinching pennies. There's one aspect to having margin that a lot of people don't talk about, and that's the generosity category. And so my wife and I, for probably the better part of the last decade, have given over 30% of our income away to different ministries that we support and want to help. And so that margin, when we stepped away and didn't have a paycheck anymore, that was lifestyle we didn't have to replace. But the whole point is now we're building a company that can create a gigantic financial windfall to perpetually fund and be a well for all of those nonprofit ministries that we support all across the world.
Yeah, and it's also generating good karma because if you give away 30%, it comes back to you 3,000.
100%.
So
100%.
one problem with that I've witnessed is, we've gone from this labor base to more of a financial capital base, but a lot of Americans struggle because, one is they spend more than they earn, but, with the cost of living rising and, again, the lack of jobs, I think, current administration is trying to bring that piece back. But, this whole financialization piece, how do you help clients, with this financial education component?
Yeah, so in working with our clients who ultimately work with the end user, their clients are the ones who are getting the financial education from them. But they come to us for, and frankly, we don't charge for this, we should, but education about, the workforce, right? So I know there's this overtone that there's not a lot of jobs to go around. There's plenty. Like there are plenty. The problem is there's so much noise between the people who have the jobs or need jobs filled and the people who want those jobs. And so that's a lot where we fill in that gap, and we basically play matchmaker because technology has, although purportedly made it easier for recruiters, but also job seekers to apply and find new positions, it's actually done the opposite. It's created so much noise that people on both sides, the job seeker and the hiring manager, are so jaded to the just vast amount of information that comes out. So, it's easy, right? You can push the easy apply button on LinkedIn and you can apply for 100 jobs in a day. But the flip side of that is the hiring manager is getting hundreds of applications a day. And there's no way for them to look through those in any meaningful way. And so both parties end up frustrated. And then we hear this narrative that there's no jobs, no one's hiring. And that's why.
Interesting. And so, kind of, you talked about those are the biggest challenges. And what is your approach to solving these? And also, because I was thinking to myself, if we could get rid of this noise, if you have like Airbnb using algorithms, or you have like Facebook and Twitter and, kind of matching content with the end user, how does AI play into the recruiting industry and how it can make things more efficient and more streamlined?
Yeah, honestly, it's not there yet. And what I mean by that is right now it's just a bunch of data and a bunch of noise, like I said. And so to be able to filter through that, it's starting. There's some good companies out there that are doing that. But really, it still comes down to personal relationships. Somebody having a conversation with somebody else and then them referring them to that position. A couple stats, 80% of candidates that are getting hired in positions were passive, meaning that they didn't apply, but a recruiter or hiring manager reached out to them. And so what AI is able to do is able to help the hiring manager reach out to the right people that haven't raised their hand and said, I'm actively looking for a job, which is not good news for those who are actively out looking for a job without a job, and really kind of brings forward the need that don't quit your job before you know what your next move is. I think it's more applicable than ever that, someone who's already employed is a much more attractive candidate. But that's something that we try to handle that misnomer too when we're working with our clients, because there's always situations that happen. That doesn't mean that's not a good candidate. So it's so far created more problems than it's created solutions. But, I think that curve is, and the wave is kind of catching up as well.
Mm. And the other, I love that. And, one thing that in basically in business is all about relationships. And you've learned that as a financial advisor, everything is relationships. So, how do you approach building long lasting, value added relationships with both clients and candidates?
Yeah. So I'll start with what we haven't figured out yet. We haven't figured out how to do that with candidates yet. We have, in a digital sense, we're trying to create an environment where candidates, can get this type of education and learn these things from us. Although we're having a challenge keeping up with it, we have a lot that reach out and say, hey, can you help us find something? And so, in our industry and our expertise, certainly we will do that. On the client's basis, though, I just like real practically speaking, like we're very tech forward. Our company has a tech stack of over 40 solutions that we use daily or monthly in what we do. 40 subscriptions we're paying for. But at the same time, like I'm kind of old school in something. So like I have, on my favorites bar, I've got an Excel worksheet that has my VIP list. And these are all the people, there's about 90 of them on there that are VIPs. And as far as I need to keep that relationship front of mind. So I'm sending them handwritten notes on a regular basis. Some of them are getting gifts. They're just getting a video text from me, thanking them for being like top of mind. One thing we do is like I'll keep an eye on LinkedIn and I'll comment and share and like their post to drive whatever they're trying to get out there forward. And so those are some real practical things that in a digital world that we're doing, old school and new school, to help continue to develop and deepen those relationships.
Interesting. Yeah. So, we're about halfway through. Talk about, what lessons you learned from challenges in your journey as a financial advisor that you took to building your company while recruiting solutions.
Yeah, great question. So a couple things I would share, and one of them was relationships, right? So my entire business, back when I was 20 years old, and not only was I 20, I looked like I was 12. And so, being the 12-year-old looking financial advisor, meeting strangers, like they were not going to say, I want to work with that guy. It's got to be an introduction. So my whole business was based off of referrals. And so being able to identify like what makes a good prospective client, and then who's somebody that can connect me to that person so I get to come in the door already a couple steps ahead. That's something that I learned how to do and did reasonably well back then. And then now, as my network has advanced and, and now they're 20 years into their career and they're running companies or owning companies, right? And their buying power and their needs are significantly better. It just exponentially multiplies the effect of that. Another one is just always being like keeping your eyes open for connections. I'll tell you what, I have something unique about our company. We have a chief prayer officer, and this gentleman prays for our company and our clients and our candidates every day. And one of the things he always reminds me, he's like, Steve, every time I'm in prayer, the Lord is saying connections, 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 which is just such a great reminder that you never know where that connection is going to take you, who their brother, who their sister, who their old college roommate is, and just treating everyone in an amazing way and stewarding relationships at that time and just being genuinely thankful and encouraging. Something I learned early on and something that I've tried to continue and repeat throughout my career.
Yeah, I love that. So the next question I have for you is, what's the fascinating concept behind the capacity model, and why did you write the book?
Yeah. So that was an attempt to let my entrepreneurial nature out when I was, neck deep in Fortune 100 employee land. And so I knew I could write a book and I would get to do some entrepreneurial things with that. So I did that, actually published it during COVID, self-published it, and, got to do some speaking and traveling a little bit with it. But here's the premise, Chris. So all of us experience stress in life, right? If we haven't already today, we certainly did yesterday. And my premise in the book is a little bit ironic. It's that stress is actually a gift. It's a gift from life telling us that it's time to grow. And so the reason that we experience stress is because we have a certain capacity, and that capacity, like we've hit our head on the ceiling of our capacity. Our capacity is built on 3 pillars. So if you think of it like the roof of your capacity, there's 3 different pillars holding it up. And those 3 pillars are our education, our habits, and our relationships. And the better job we've done of developing and deepening our education or our habits or our relationships, the higher that pillar is and the higher the capacity level that we have is, or the more of life we could have thrown at us up until the point that we begin to experience stress. And so in the book, I break down, what are our options when we experience stress? And then I go into detail on, what those three pillars, what are some different things that we can do to make sure that we're growing those pillars and not feeling stuck.
Interesting. So, a lot of the audience and listeners, viewers are doctors, lawyers, dentists, and increasingly I'm hearing this story of something like could be a financial, relationship, health, or just kind of like this inkling for more. And these listeners and viewers, they make very similar 900K, million, some of them. Talk about how you handle this when, life tells you to step away from that and there's something, and then you have to kind of swallow your pride and you have
Mhm.
to basically, start from zero again. How do
Yeah.
you handle that for the
Yeah.
audience and listeners?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so great question. And a couple thoughts around that. Number one, I was blessed early on in my life and my career. I would say probably in my, when I was 30, 32, 33, which I know a lot of your listeners are probably still finishing up schooling, but, relatively so, I was more successful by, you know, human nature standards than I ever thought I would be, right? I never thought I would make $250,000 a year. And then I never thought I would make $500,000 a year. So like multiple times I got to experience what I thought was the pinnacle. And now like everything's relative, right? But what that taught me was that another zero, another comma, another 1,000 square feet on my house, another, foreign sports car was not going to it wasn't going to make me any happier. It might make me a little bit happier, but not the percentage more that it cost financially, or even more so the time that it took to achieve that away from other things. And so I got to do some deep work and really figure out, what is it that's important to me? Like, what do I value, moving from success to significance? And there's actually a really good book called Living Forward. And that book walks you through an exercise to where you create a life plan. It actually says go to a hotel for 8 hours, and this is and it takes literally 8 hours to do the whole thing. And you write like, what are all the important things in your life? Rank them in order. What do you want the future state of that to look like? Who do you want to speak at your funeral, and what do you want them to say about you? Like really powerful stuff. And so both my wife and I did that separately and then came together. And then it says you have to read it. And this is like an 8-page document. You have to read it every day for 30 days. And then you read it a couple times a week for a month, and then once a week for a quarter. And you just keep it in front of you. And so, Chris, what that did was that really aligned me in who I was and what I was uniquely gifted with, and what those unique giftings, what I thought their purpose on this earth was. And so that allowed me to redefine what success looked like in my life. And it said that it was okay if, I didn't have that paycheck anymore, or I didn't have that fancy managing partner title, or I wasn't winning trophies from, someone else's company. Like it allowed me to really say, what are the actions and the giftings that I have, and how much of my time am I spending engaging in that? And that is much more rewarding. And then ultimately it was a step of faith, because if I didn't feel like God was calling me to do that, like there'd be a lot of times I would have wanted to quit and doubted along the way. And so just being really aligned in that is like, the final and big puzzle piece.
And the other thing is on the other side is a lot of people have taken that leap and they've sold their possessions, and then their colleagues or their loved ones or friends, either they think they're mad and they've lost it, or just some crisis, or like where they're actually envious.
Mhm.
How do you handle that? How do you handle that?
Yeah. Well, I would say you have to have a clear reason why you did it. This is a silly example, but it's a, kind of a recent one. So my family and I go to a church that has several different campuses. And, we were going to one for 5 years, and then we felt like, you know what, we want to move to a different campus. And I got some really, really wise advice when we were going through that decision. Not a huge decision, but, it's a decision. And they said, have an actual, like a phrase, a verse, or like a promise almost that you can come back to on why you made that decision. So if people ask you, or if you begin to doubt in that decision. And so I think that applies no matter what you're doing. Like there has to be an internal conviction as to why you did something that's going to seem weird or crazy or out there, as you said, bad to other people, because you're the one who has to live with yourself. Obviously, if you're married, right, very important you and your spouse are aligned in that, because there's going to be dark days where you're like, I need someone else to be in this with me. But I think if you have that, I know if you have that, what will happen is that some people won't get it and they probably won't be a close connection or in your network anymore. Other people that were in your network will align even more with that and they'll become a closer relationship, and your relationships will kind of transform and morph into one that supports and is surrounded by people that are headed in that same direction in life as you.
Yeah. How can people connect with you, and if they wanted to have help with recruiting and hiring, and if they wanted to actually just, reach out to you for more advice, guidance, membership, connect with you, how can they
Yeah.
do that?
So Steve Perry, I'm on LinkedIn, like way too much. So if you don't want to hear anything else from me, don't follow me on LinkedIn. But if you do, I respond to everything on there. I post a lot and videos, things like that. Our website is thewell.solutions. So obviously you can check us out on there as well. But LinkedIn is where I'm the most active, and I'd be happy and enjoy to connect with any of your listeners.
Excellent. Well, I really enjoyed this inspiring conversation, and I love the work that you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank you so much, Chris.